Hello, this is Billy Core from the Nostalgia Mall, and as you recall, a couple of weeks ago, my aunt gave me a whole bunch of her old computers, and I promised I would make videos about most of them if I was able to. So we're going to start off with a video about this thing right here. What is it? Well, this is, if I'm not mistaken, the first computer my church ever owned. This was built for the church sometime in late 1999 for my aunt to use when she first became secretary there. And she used it for a few years, I believe, until the church upgraded to a Dell Dimension 4600 in 2003, which I am also the owner of now. But today we're talking about this computer right here. The specs of this computer: it's got a 333 megahertz Intel Celeron slot 1. It originally had a 20 gig hard drive, but I had to give that back to my aunt. So it now has, I think, a 17 gig drive that I bought off eBay, and that's working fine in it. Has 128 megabytes of RAM and a motherboard known as the Intel Maui board. I believe that's it. Maui as in the location. And you'll see why it's called that later on. It has a CD-ROM drive. There was a CDRW drive right here, but there's now a blanking plate here. Well, that's because I stuck the CDRW drive into my Carolina Flyer. It's the one there on the bottom. And we got a iOmega Zip 100 drive, and I got an email, and 3.5-inch floppy disk drive. The case, I don't know the exact model, but I'm 99% sure this was manufactured by A-Open because it has a lot of characteristics of an A-Open case that I've seen before. Because in fact the blanking plate that's in here, it came from the Carolina Flyer case, which is an A-Open case, and it fit perfectly here. And the case, may or may not be able to see, is a little bit yellowed, but I've seen a lot worse. The rear I/O, even get a little guide right there. But we got PS2 mouse and keyboard, two USB 1.1s, serial, parallel, VGA, game port, and sound card inputs and outs. And we got a 10100 Ethernet card. And down here at one time was a 56K dial-up modem, but I got rid of that because it's just really unnecessary these days. So let's go ahead and open it up and take a look inside. Okay, there we go. First of all, this is a micro ATX motherboard, but the case, as you can see, is full ATX. There's our 333 megahertz Celeron. Got our 128 megs of RAM there. We have just two PCI slots, one ISA slot, and notice there's a severe lack of AGP slot, and that kind of annoys me because that kind of limits your choices for gaming style video cards. Of course, there are some good PCI ones out there, so you're not too much out of luck. It does have onboard ATI video. I forget the exact model, but it's nothing real powerful. I think it's only like maybe 4 megs of video RAM, so not a whole lot to rely on there. And down on the bottom we have a diagram of the motherboard, and it's a MU440EX motherboard made by Intel. There's our CD-ROM, zip, floppy, and our Western Digital hard drive that I added to it. We have a full-size PC speaker, but it's actually disconnected because I don't believe this motherboard has a header for a external PC speaker, which is kind of disappointing. Power supply, made by Entech. It's 135 watts, which doesn't sound like a lot to today's standards, but back then it was reasonable. What else do we have here that's interesting? That might be it. And it's got onboard audio by Creative. I forget the exact sound chip it uses, but I want to discuss that a little bit more later when we turn the computer on. So, yeah, and the computer still works perfectly. I had to replace the CMOS battery on it, which is not really surprising for a 19-year-old computer. So, there's one more thing I want to show before we power it on. And this manila envelope is all the original paperwork and discs that came with this computer when it was built 19 years ago. I actually didn't know all this stuff still existed, but my aunt gave this to me yesterday. So I figured we'd take a look and see what's inside here. It's pretty torn up. First we get our Windows 98 2nd Edition manual. I believe my aunt was trying to get DOS games running on here at one time. That's why she wrote all this stuff on there. We have the certificate of authenticity for the Intel Celeron processor with this little Celeron hologram. All kinds of languages there. Limited warranty. Something from Creative, just like some accessories they were selling back in the day. Something else for the processor, dated March 1998. Installation instructions for the processor. Back then it was pretty easy to do when Intel still had their slot technology going. End user license agreement for Microsoft Plus 98. This computer was the first computer I ever saw Plus for 98 installed on. I was fascinated by it, and eventually I got my own copy. Windows 98 starts here. Information for Australia. The Microsoft registration card. Where do you want to go today? It was never filled out. Presumably this came with the disk for Windows 98. Very cool. An ad for America Online 4.0. I remember using that version. Oh yeah, that brings back memories. And cardboard. Can't have a computer without a good piece of cardboard. Okay, more for the processor. And there was a lot of documentation for that CPU. Registration card for the zip drive. Really cool. Installation guide for the zip drive. and the user's guide for the zip drive. A Creative Sound Blaster registration card. Again, I forget what chip that is on the motherboard, but it's definitely internal, or built in, I mean. Creative CD-ROM software. Well, this is for a Creative CD-ROM drive, which this computer does not have. Maybe it did at one time, but it doesn't anymore. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe it's for the monitor that would have gone with this system, which presumably is very, very much long gone. I don't really remember what that monitor looked like either. Whoop. Yeah, it looks like it is for a monitor. Does it have a diagram, I wonder? Kind of. And warranty for the monitor. And what looks like a CD for the monitor. A CD for the zip drive software from iOmegaWare. Thank you for purchasing a Creative Labs upgrade kit. And here's the rather thick manual for the motherboard. And it's an Intel I can't talk. Intel MU440EX motherboard from our good friends at Intel. Oh, it's thick because it's in different languages. Driver CD for the motherboard. Software for the former modem that was in here from 3Com US Robotics. Yeah, back then, dial-up was the way to go if you wanted to get on the internet in 1999. Don't do that to floppy disk, by the way. A boot disk for Windows 98 2nd edition. An official one. I've never seen one before, actually. Windows 98 starts here, which I actually have one of these somewhere. Always liked how on the back of Microsoft products it says if you don't accept the agreement to take it back and get a refund. A disc with no label and a broken piece right here. Disc shouldn't be doing that. And I finally own an official legit copy of Windows 98 2nd edition, the full installation CD. And this one has Plus for 98 on it, which I've never seen one of these before. I knew they did something like this with 95, but I didn't know they did it for 98. So yeah, I'm glad to finally have one of those. And a floppy disk for the Creative CD-ROM that supposedly used to be in this system. So, yeah, it was neat looking at all that documentation and all the discs. It's always a neat thing to get an old computer that still has all the original documentation, all the original setup discs to go with it. You really don't see that much, so it's always nice to have that. Okay, let's go ahead and hook it up to the test bench and power it on. Alright, let's power it up. It's one of those computers that turns on as soon as you apply power. Let's go into setup. See, this is why it's called Maui board. It says Intel Corporation Maui 3, M-A-U-I 3, which is kind of amusing. Okay, standard BIOS here for Intel. Intel Celeron 333 megahertz. All our goodies there. There's our drive listings. Got a Western Digital 17 gig drive in there, which is kind of an odd size. But it was on eBay and it was cheap. I needed a hard drive for it. There's no spot for a B disk drive, which is interesting. So if you want to add a 5 1/4 inch drive to this, you're out of luck. Resources there. Whoop. Exit saving changes. Without saving changes, I mean. Okay, booting into Windows 98. This is the install I put on here. So it's pretty fresh. And there's no sound because I don't have a speaker hooked up right now, but let me fix that. Okay, I believe we got sound now. Yes, we do. Just using this Bluetooth speaker, which has an auxiliary input there. That's good enough for this job. Okay, let's go into our system properties. Nothing too exciting here, but let's go to Disk Manager. We have an ATI 3D Rage Pro that's built into the motherboard. Linksys fast Ethernet adapter. I've used these cards before. They're pretty good. Kind of a pain in the butt to get working on operating systems made before Windows 98, but it works. Okay, I was wrong. It's actually not, what's it called? Sound Blaster built in. It's actually made by Yamaha. And Yamaha, they make pretty good sound cards. And this, I believe, uses a Intel 440 base chipset, which most slot 1 base systems used. Let's do a DX diag. And I did install DirectX 9 on here, which is the latest version 4, 98 2nd edition. Let's go to our display properties. Yeah, only 4 megs of video memory. This computer would probably benefit quite a bit from a PCI-based Voodoo 2 card. Never used a Voodoo 2, I've only used the 1 and 3. But someday I'll hopefully try one out. Let's do a quick Canyon test. I'm curious to see what the MIDI sounds like. I'm not sure if I tested it or not. There it is. It's software based. Not bad wavetable. Whoa, that gets loud. Okay, I guess we should try a game out on here. I really don't know what we can play on here. I don't have anything installed. This is still a pretty fresh Windows install. But let me go through my CDs and see if I can dig something out. Okay, let's try out Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. I figured this would be a good benchmark for this system since it's supposedly from about 1999, which is when the computer was built. Again, video is ATI 3D. I think a 3D Rage Pro, I want to say. I've already forgotten. And it's only got 4 megs of video memory. I'll let that install. Alright, we'll add a shortcut at the desktop. Don't want to register. Okay, let me grab my USB gamepad just to make it a little bit easier to play. This is an extremely generic $5 gamepad that I bought off eBay earlier this year, but it gets the job done well, and it works on all versions of Windows all the way back to 98. Just uses a generic USB joystick, which is good enough. Alright, let's play some Need for Speed. This is actually my favorite version of Need for Speed. This copy I have, I actually got from the bargain bin at some electronics store back in 2004. Okay, 1 player, single race, go. Alright, we'll do the Corvette. Let's check our settings first. Okay, I need to set up the gamepad, and it's not working. Well, time to do some troubleshooting, my favorite thing in the world. Okay, it's working now. I just had to close the game and open it back up. That's all it needed. Let's check our video settings. And we'll crank it up to 800 by 600. Why not? And those settings look good. And let's see if the 6-foot flames shoot out the motherboard. Okay.
Three, 2, 1. Go!
It doesn't look too bad. And so far, not too choppy. I mean, I've seen this game look better before, but for what this computer is based off of, it's really not too bad. I'm doing real well, aren't I? Typical GM piece of crap. I'm in last place. No real surprise there. I'm being beaten by a guy called Deadbeat. That's depressing. I'm in 7th of 8 right now.
Final lap.
No, I'm not playing to win this race. And I'm miraculously in 6th place now. Yeah, the frame rate on this is pretty good, and I've got the settings cranked up medium to high. Kids, don't try this at home. I know you have the $50,000 Corvette, but please don't try this at home. There.
That's your best lap. You placed 6th.
I'm surprised I did that good, to be honest. Okay, let's head back to Windows. Next thing I want to do is, well, actually I want to try a DOS game out. I want to see how this onboard sound card does with DOS gaming. So, I believe I have Skyroad's Christmas Special on a flash drive. Let me go grab that. Okay. Alright. Wow, it actually sounds exactly like it should. I am quite impressed. sometimes this music sounds completely off. It sounds too wavetable-y on later sound cards that supported DOS, but this sounds exactly like it's supposed to, and I am very impressed. So, if you're wanting DOS gaming, this is a good motherboard to consider. I just wish it had more expansion slots and an AGP slot. But yeah, it sounds exactly like it needs to. Again, I wouldn't be playing this game if it wasn't for the music. And I'm actually playing this with a USB controller. Believe it or not, believe it or not, if you use a USB controller on a DOS game in Windows, it'll work just fine. Of course, results may vary. See, I've, like I said, I've always been a fan of Yamaha sound cards. The sound card built into my Toshiba Satellite 2505 CDS, it has a Yamaha card in it, and the MIDI on it sounds excellent. Okay, here's row 3, because I always have to torture myself. It's been a tradition for almost 10 years now since I started doing computer videos back in '08. Believe it or not, that's further than I usually get. So, we're getting ad-lib support on this, and Sound Blaster digital sound effects on here. So this built-in sound card on this motherboard is extremely DOS game friendly, and I am happy about that. Makes me like this computer a little bit more. Now, what exactly am I going to do with this? Because I really don't have the need for a system like this right now. Well, I'm going to keep it. I might move it over to another case, because I know a lot of people are suckers for these generic looking white box cases, but they're just not very appealing to me. They're just kind of boring. So I might transfer these into a more exciting case. Maybe like what I got on for the Carolina Flyer. That's a white box as well, but it has a little bit more going for it, like the blue accent there. So, I will be holding on to this computer. One big reason is it's my church's first computer, possibly, that is. I seem to recall my aunt telling me that the pastor we had in back in the 90s, he left in 1996, I believe. He had a computer at church that was like some kind of 386 based system or something from that time frame, so that was a thing. Possibly, that is. So yeah, this computer made a lot of bulletins for our church. Let's just say that. So hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, this is Billy Core signing off. Oh yeah, for some reason, even though it's ACPI capable, I have to do this. Maybe that driver CD has something for it, but I don't know. Anyway, Billy Core signing off. Thank you for visiting the Nostalgia Mall. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also support me on Patreon if you would like. The link to all of these are down below. Until next time, this is Billy Core signing off.